Welcome, Mariner fans, to the Maiden Voyage of Mariners Forever. I'm Dan. That's Michael. If you've watched any of our content in the past, you might think of us as football guys. And yeah, I'm wearing a Seahawks hat here. But we both have backgrounds in covering baseball as well. Michael used to write for Soto Mojo. I used to cover the sport in my earlier podcasts. We talk about the Mariners, just been focusing on the Seahawks for the last 3 years. So really excited about this. Welcome. Please hit that subscribe button, like the video, and hit that bell for notifications. That's the best way to help us grow this channel initially right out of the gate. Michael, how do you feel, man?
I'm doing good. This is exciting. I know you and I have talked about this for a long time, and we kind of joked about it. And then the jokes kind of became a little bit half jokes. And then it was, I think, what was it, a month or two ago? It's like, screw it. Let's do this, man. Like, yeah. And then I think things were a little bit rough in Mariners land for a minute, and we were like, oh no. And then it's been a pretty fun month and a half of Mariners baseball. You and I have talked Mariners for a couple of years. We both love this team. We love everything about it, good, bad, and in the middle of that with being a Mariners fan. And that kind of embodies Mariners forever with us. And so I'm honored. I'm so excited to start this maiden voyage with you. Like you said, can't wait to talk Mariners.
And that's really how I came up with the name for Seahawks Forever. And it's the same implication here. It's just to let people know that are kind of new to our content or my show is we tend to lean into the positive and the optimistic. There's a lot of naysayers and doomsdayers out there about the Mariners, and understandably so. It has taken, I've lost much of my hairline. It has taken years off my life. I'm quite sure of it. And it's funny. Yeah. Just for the sake of full transparency, because you referenced it, we had talked about launching this year. I recently committed to content creation full time. So I was able to take on a little bit more. And then the Mariners stumble out of the gate. They get off to that horrible, ugly 3-7 start. And I think I texted you something along the lines of maybe not the best time to start talking about the Mariners. Like I was as bummed as anyone. But let's start there, right? Let's go back a little bit to the off season and kind of set the stage. And that's sort of the point. We're going to get you caught up today on how we feel like this Mariners team is performing, obviously, as they sit in first place, 2.5 games up today as they are in Houston. They'll play the second of a 3-game series or a 4-game series tonight, right? It's Friday.
Yep.
I've lost all.
Yep, 4-game series.
They dropped the first one 9-2 last night. But just, going back over the offseason, I am one of those who, as I said, I always try to find the silver lining and look at the positive. And while much of the Mariner fan base focuses, as it completely understandable, as they should, on ownership's lack of financial commitment to this team, or at least a financial commitment that seems to be congruous with their revenue and the support that they get from fans, that every offseason I usually talk myself into how this current roster as it's constructed can succeed. And also that, look, we can't do anything about what ownership does. We can't make them sell. We can't make them offer up more money or apply it towards payroll. All we can do is hope that the general manager and the front office staff of the team does the best with what they have to work with that they can. This offseason, though, I was as bummed as anyone. I just thought they were just not as active or creative as they could have been. How did you feel about how the offseason went? And more specifically, like on opening day, what were your expectations for this team?
It was definitely a bummer because for, what was it, the third time in 4 years you'd missed the playoffs by a game or two in the final week of the season. And it's just so many games you let get away. Obviously last year, the downslide that led to Scott Service, who had been our manager for, I can't remember how many years, 7 or 8 years, I believe, if not more.
10 years.
Yeah. And so that was just very jarring to see him not even survive the season. And then you have Dan Wilson come in, who's been, a Mariner legend, been part of the program. Like there wasn't really an interview process. It was kind of a weird ending. You almost actually came back and kind of got hot towards at the end of the season. Classic Mariners, little, too late. And so you're just like, okay, well, there's something there. You obviously have this incredible rotation, this potential. You just had a special season that you'll never have again with that rotation, being healthy and all of them playing the way they did. Let's do a little bit of something, right? Come on, John. Come on, Jerry. Can we do something? And it just wasn't that type of offseason, trade market wise. It wasn't that type of offseason in free agency. Pretty much other than Juan Soto, everybody else, and maybe Blake Snell, everyone else was kind of a lot of buyer beware, right? And then silence. A lot of guys were left hanging out there. The Pete Alonso conversation, that was never realistic, right? Like, you're just not going to get into a bidding war with Steve Cohen and the New York Mets. And at some point, there's going to be a number, and he's not going to want to come to Seattle. And who knows if that ever even became anything more than a few just rumors in social media and stuff. And just, again, the winter is very long when you miss the playoffs. And you miss the playoffs by that little, and then your biggest signing is bringing back Jorge Polanco, who had one of the worst seasons that you've seen, a Colton Wong type of season. It was just like, man, this sucks. Like, can we just do something? Can you just trade something? They didn't trade from their treasure chest of prospects. They didn't go out and spend a lot of money, which is something that we've been used to. And so you kind of go into opening day, it's like, all right, well, my rotation is going to be amazing, and my offense is awful unless Julio Rodriguez and Cal Raleigh smash. And what we've seen so far is the rotation has been dominated by injuries. There's still been some dominance, and then it's just been a little bit of right time, right place. There's a few things the Mariners offense is doing better than a lot of people thought. And then a few guys have stood up and had big moments early on, while you have a borderline MVP candidate in Cal Raleigh right now that's kind of carrying the load and stuff. And so my expectation was, all right, we're going to be right back where we were, 85, 90 wins. I'm not going to say the percentage that everyone likes to make fun of, but you're going to be right in there, because that's what this roster and this organization is built around. And so far, we haven't seen what we all thought we were going to see, which has kind of been really refreshing as a Mariners fan. Now it's the question of, it's been 50 games almost. Is it sustainable?
It's kind of par for the course for the Mariners. And as a Mariner fan, that you take one step forward, one step back, and or sometimes you take a step back and you try to prepare yourself emotionally for the fact that, well, man, this probably just isn't going to happen this year. Maybe this is a bridge year. We've got all those hitting prospects coming down the pipeline. We're going to talk in future shows about the minor leagues. Certainly, I know you and I both have a passion for that, and they are on fire right now, pretty much all the way up and down their minor league system. Some of those young hitters, but they're a couple of years away. So maybe this is just a bridge year, right? And then they rally. And they end up in first place again, and they kind of fool us all. And some of that might have something to do with the fact that while we were kind of sitting on our hands over the offseason, I don't really think the rest of the teams in the AFC or in the American League West, that's probably going to happen again. It got significantly better anyway. But then, as you said, the offense looks better after that 3-7 start, and then Victor Robles gets hurt. When, one of the keys and really the sparks, I think, to the second half last year, and when the offense started to turn around after the coaching changes, Luke Raley gets hurt. And so we're back to thinking, well, we're just not going to be able to score any runs. And then the pitchers start to fall. So George Kirby starts the season on the injured list, makes his debut last night, looked like his first time out, right? We can talk more specifically about his performance there, but he's not a guy that I think either of us are probably concerned with long-term. And then Logan Gilbert, who gets off to a Cy Young contention type start, he gets hurt. Then Bryce Miller, who really, it seemed like something was wrong all the way through. Just didn't seem to be himself. The velocity was up and down. He wasn't able to get past the 5th or 6th inning. Just didn't look like he not only wasn't taking a step forward, but that he was taking a step back. Well, then they find out there's some inflammation there. They shut him down. And then, as if the luck can't get any worse, Brian Wu takes a foul ball off his calf yesterday in the dugout in Houston. There's concern there. Sounds like he'll be fine, but he's been their best pitcher. How important is it? How crucial is it to get these guys back quickly? Now, Gilbert and Miller both throw sim games today in Houston, so they are taking steps to get back. Hopefully those will go well. Is this sustainable, or is this a house of cards and we're just living on borrowed time right now?
Gosh, you would like to say that there's something sustainable to what we've seen, but I think Jorge Polanco from an offensive side is a perfect example. That dude was the best hitter in baseball for the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season. He was right there with Aaron Judge. And I think last night you just see he's a perfect example of the situation. His body is breaking down. He is a player that can't hit from the right side right now. And he's battling all sorts of injuries, coming off a knee procedure this winter and stuff. And you even saw it last night. he really struggled. You can tell it just looks like it's a struggle to swing the bat. And so that kind of is a microcosm of this roster of you've jumped out to a 28 and 20, 28 and 21 record. You have a 2.5, 3.5 game division lead as you were heading into Houston. You've built a nice little cushion because everyone has picked up the slack. Like shout out to Emerson Hancock. I believe someone talked about yesterday in one of their shows. He is finally starting to look like that first round pick out of Georgia. Like he is starting to show a little bit of that. Now, is that sustainable? We've also seen, we saw him in his first start of the year against the Tigers. He could barely get out of the first inning.
Terrible. Yeah, he was terrible.
Logan Evans, you're definitely seeing a guy that I think is a reliever that we're asking him to be a starter, and he's battling, right? And like they're just keeping things close. But 162 games, a lot of people complain about the length of a baseball season. The beauty of it is by 162, you know who you are. Like you know who you are well before that. And 162 games is going to show your strengths. It's going to expose your flaws, all of it. The good, the bad, the ugly. It's going to show it all. And that's what makes baseball really fun is you have that. And then all of a sudden it dives right into a best, 2 out of 3, best 3 out of 5, best 4 out of 7. And so you have to get your horses. Like this offense right now, it's 11th in OPS. If you told me before the season started, the Mariners will have the 11th OPS as a team, I'm like, sweet, we probably won the AOS and we're probably right there pushing for 100 wins because our pitching is going to be so dominant. 6th in home runs, 2nd in walks. Like we're 7th in strikeouts, which if you told me that, I'd say that's probably a massive improvement over what we had seen over the last couple of years with this roster. This offense is average to even above average right now. I don't know, Dan, do you think it's going to stay that way? Like over 162 games with what we have as a roster? I personally don't. So we need that rotation to come back. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, the offense seems to be, even though they have improved in some of those ancillary areas, they're walking more, they seem to be more patient, taking more pitches per at bat, and they're not striking out as much. The change in approach last year, taking more off of the hitters' plates, not overloading them with so much of the analytics that they're overthinking at the plate, just hunting for your pitch. Waiting on the fastball, taking pitches you can handle, looking for pitches in a zone, and then trying to do as much as you can with it. And we're seeing the results of that. We're seeing better exit velocities. Dan Wilson's managerial style is different, as much as some people used to think that a lot of Scott Service's decisions on the field were dictated by the front office. We're coming from upstairs. I mean, Wilson's been allowed to manage the game the way he wants to. He runs more, although that seems the last couple of weeks to have tailed off a little bit. There's some injuries involved there too. And that is the mystery of this team, is how can they continue to score enough runs with all these injuries? And on most nights, you look at that bottom third of the order and it doesn't even look like a major league hitting order.
Rivas, Mastroboni, no disrespect to them, but it's not.
Solano, was brought in as a professional bat, a guy who's going to, be a solid floor player. He's been terrible. But yet, as you mentioned, like Leo Rivas has kind of been a revelation, has really stepped up and come through in the clutch a few times. I do think they're still overly reliant on the home run. We saw it when Cal Raleigh was on that tear. They went on a winning streak, and they were, and that's kind of when they made that move into first place and got to where we are today. I do think one thing that maybe isn't getting enough credit, and so I want to get your thoughts on this. One of my biggest not pet peeves, one of my biggest peeves over the offseason is I thought, okay, if you're gonna be constrained by your budget, you're not gonna be able to go out and get that big bat. Don't tell me you pursued Christian Walker. You knew you weren't going to be able to afford him. And, I thought they needed to add to the bullpen, I thought it was a massive failure that they didn't. I thought they were just doing that Mariner thing where they were counting on Matt Brash coming back way earlier from Tommy John than most pitchers can be expected to come back. I thought they were, just putting too many of their eggs in that basket. And then we get to the beginning of the season. Gregory Santos once again can't go, and he's on the injured list. And so, we're having to rely on some of these pitchers that we're not comfortable putting in high leverage situations. But that bullpen, as much as any part of the roster in the last couple of weeks, especially, has really locked down some of these games. And they've been able to hold on to games where they score a couple runs early, and then the opposing starting pitcher settles in. and they're able to come in and they're managing it well. And then they finish out with Andres Munoz, who I don't think there's much of an argument that he's been the best relief pitcher in baseball this year. That bullpen has been one of the things that's gotten us to where we are today, hasn't it?
Yeah, like you said, Munoz, the best closer in baseball right now. He's been absolutely lights out, barring something unforeseen. In the All-Star game, he's going to be coming in there in the ninth inning, which is going to be super exciting to see. Having that, basically, you just know, okay, you're playing an 8-inning game against the Seattle Mariners, because if you're losing in the ninth, Munoz is locking you down. I mean, that's the Yankees did that for 15 years with Mariano Rivera. And I'm not comparing Munoz to Mariano Rivera, but there is something about that where you just feel more stress when a game is 8 innings long instead of 9. It feels different. And so, you brought up like other guys that have come in and have struggled and stuff. Like Troy Taylor, was really excited about him coming up. Couldn't throw a strike. Kind of got us in trouble where we had to bring Munoz in against the White Sox, which is unfortunate. Hopefully that doesn't come back and bite us when we need Munoz in Houston. But overall, that bullpen has been amazing. And again, not saying it's a house of cards, but it kind of goes back to what you're saying. We're hitting a lot of home runs. We're drawing a ton of walks. Our rotation is super hurt, but the guys are doing enough. And then the bullpen is getting pushed to the limit, but they're getting the job done. It feels like you got enough pieces in place for a legitimate, I think right now you're the second or third best team in the American League. The record shows it. The metrics kind of show that the Yankees and the Tigers have kind of really stood out. You don't hear a lot about the injuries of the Tigers. You don't hear a lot about, the injuries with the Yankees. Obviously, they lost Garrett Cole and they lost Juan Soto in free agency. Yeah. They still went out and got a lot of guys. There's something about what you're doing right now, even through all these injuries, even with Julio Rodriguez with his back tightness, which I know is I expect him to play today, but this is 3 straight years we've heard of back tightness with Julio. It's one of those things where it's man, that's really concerning. Us older guys, we understand what a back injury is, right? It's not something that always necessarily goes away. And the fact that we keep hearing about it is concerning. So back to the bullpen, it's been awesome, but you're definitely a body short, right? That is a clear, there's a few midseason acquisitions that we'll need to look at down the road if we want to really push and not just be in the hunt, but go for the throat and go win this division and get a chance to go to the World Series. You're going to need a body there, but also you got to get some of these guys healthy. And then one of the big things is if that rotation comes back, what do you do with Emerson Hancock? What do you do with Logan Evans? Personally, I feel like they're going to probably send Emerson back to AAA. I don't think they're necessarily going to trade him. But Logan Evans, it just makes a lot of sense. Move him into that bullpen. Let's see what he can do, especially with Troy Taylor looking like he might not come back up again this year with just some of the stuff that he's dealing with his command. I'd love to see Logan Evans come up. You just need a couple more arms in there just to kind of keep the ship afloat until Gilbert, Kirby's healthy, and Miller comes back. Because right now, Wu and Castillo are doing a fantastic job. They're doing probably more than what we should expect out of them at this point, and that's what's keeping this thing afloat.
How about this as an idea, though? Because when you look at Hancock and Evans, and I do think it makes sense to probably send Emerson back down. If they were if we get all 5 of those guys back, maybe you send him back down. You keep him on his rotation. He's there if you need him. I think Evans is an interesting case. They tried moving him to the bullpen last year when he was lights out in AA because they wanted to accelerate sort of an Edwin Diaz plan, accelerate, get him to the major leagues, get him to contribute quicker. He didn't take to it. He agreed to do it, but he didn't take to it. He didn't feel comfortable. He never got into a groove. He wasn't as effective. So they moved him back to the rotation. So I wonder how effective he might be at the major league level if they try to do that again. It seems to make sense because he isn't a guy that has a ton of fastball value. He doesn't have the dominant fastball, but he's got some. That slider is I mean, what he did to Luis Robert in his appearance in Chicago, just throwing him, just kept throwing
filthy
over and over. He knew it was coming and he kept swinging at it. I mean, it's pretty nasty. That seems like it would play in the bullpen. And so maybe they will give that another shot. But how about this as an idea? Because even before he ran into issues this year, there were some durability questions or stamina questions. He's not the biggest, strongest guy with Bryce Miller. Maybe when he comes back, if Emerson Hancock is still pitching well, if you're concerned about getting Miller back out there, and the Mariners, in my opinion, have tended to rush pitchers back at times before they're ready, not giving them as many innings maybe on their rehabilitation assignments as I think they should. How about Bryce Miller as an extra arm to pitch in the 7th inning, 8th inning in the bullpen if he comes back and you still feel like, and this is assuming Kirby gets straightened out and Gilbert gets back as well. I think I'm not so sure Miller might not fit in the bullpen, man.
I think his stuff is like that perfect, not saying like John Smoltz, it'd be as smooth as a transition as what John Smoltz did, going from the rotation to bullpen back to the rotation. But Miller kind of has that. I feel like he's got that mentality where he could easily go in there and do it. I think you and I talked about this before. If the Mariners make the playoffs, you're not going to have a 5-man rotation in the divisional round or even the league championship series. If you made it that far, you're going to run with 4 guys. And I think it's pretty clear that you would run out there. If everyone is healthy, you're going to run out there with Gilbert, Kirby, Castillo, and Wu. Like, I think that's the 4. And so can Bryce Miller become, do you remember Andrew Miller from 2016 with the Cleveland Guardians? Like, that was the most diabolical weapon in all of the playoffs that entire season. And they literally ran him into the ground, and they almost got them a World Series, right? They got it to Game 7 of the World Series against the Cubbies. Like, I can see that type of style with Bryce Miller. If you're going to do it in the regular season, I'm a little bit more hesitant. I think they would be more likely to go with a 6-man rotation for a while until they get some things figured out. If Emerson is like, no, I don't want to go. Like, here's 6 innings of 1-run ball. I don't want to go. And that's a great problem to have. And I don't think we've ever heard of how Dan feels about a 6-man rotation. I know Jerry's always been open to it if the situation makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I think when you get down to it, it makes a lot of sense if you're going to do it with Bryce, if you're going to do it for the rest of the year. So I guess that's my question for you. Are you willing to do it for the rest of the year, or like?
I think you play that by ear. You know, it's just I would rather do without those guys for a little bit longer and just try to, because it's still so early. I mean, we haven't even played 60 games yet, and just make sure that when they're healthy, they're healthy. Make sure that whatever was going on with Bryce Miller, even before any of them admitted that there was a physical issue, that he's ready to go. Like, send him on a long rehab assignment, you know, barring any other injuries. Just make sure that when he's ready no matter what the role is. In the meantime, Jerry DiPoto and Justin Hollander just keep doing their thing. And yet again, they find a couple of guys in the bullpen that exceed expectations and that they kind of play with their pitch mix and fix them. 2 examples: Carlos Vargas, who we're still getting, you know, as much as the idea was out there this offseason that, hey, maybe we bring Paul Sewald back and add him to the bullpen mix. Well, that trade's still paying off. When we thought maybe it was a wash, Carlos Vargas, a guy that couldn't find the strike zone, has been pretty good. He's been one of those guys that has been asked to pitch high leverage innings, even though you might not think that's ideal. And even though he's not lights out every time he goes out, he's given them a chance and he's helped them win some ball games. And then, you know, every year there's one, right? Last year it was Colin Snyder, probably. You know, Sewald was a great example before that. But Casey Leguimina is a guy that, you know, kind of bounced around in his career, didn't stay healthy, had some issues there. But when he was healthy, the stuff was good, but tons of walks, you know, had trouble throwing strikes himself. He's been really good as well. So they just keep finding ways. The question is just how long can they keep it up? I always go back to what Billy Beane used to talk about. And I remember reading about this in Moneyball, that he used to view the season in thirds. And the first third of the season, which we're almost there. The first third of the season, you evaluate your team. You find out who you are. Second third of the season, you make those moves to improve the team. And then you hope that all comes together. And in the last third of the season, you take off and you become the best version of yourself. We saw that time and again in Oakland during those days. You know, there were years that you thought, oh, the A's magic has run out. And then they win 19 straight.
Yes, they do.
Out of nowhere, because they get rid of, you know, they make all those moves, as the movie documented. We're almost there. We're almost at 60 games. So you could say this is kind of the third quarter poll. How much longer can they wait with guys like Solano and Mastroboni struggling before they start to make some moves, even internally, before the trade market heats up?
Well, you saw it with the addition of Leody Taveras. That was not a cheap move. So I think they're looking for anything to tinker. I think they realize they've got a good situation here. The AOS, like you said, was very quiet this winter, and so it's very much up for grabs. And that's worked out so far. You have a nice lead. We'll see how that looks once you leave Houston. Hopefully, you can extend that lead or at least split this road series and go. But I don't know how much longer you can wait. Now, Jerry has historically been patient when he's not sure if he's got a good team. And then when the years where he feels good, when they get off to a hot start, we saw that with Denard Span a couple years ago. Was it Colombe or Cologne, the closer that they brought in and stuff? Like they've done June trades on. They've gone after those teams that are looking to clear some payroll, that are just horrific, and they want to make a move to go get them. I think you have enough holes. I think you have to start looking now. Like I think second base, first base, third base, depth in the outfield, which the depth in the outfield is very interesting because if Julio's healthy, you're as good as long as your three guys out there are healthy. But you're asking Leody Taveras, who's not been a good baseball player, despite all of his hype coming up with the Rangers, you're still waiting on Luke Raley, which we're hoping to get him in the next month or so, hopefully. Robles, you don't hear a lot about. Like, I really think that's just a really rough, devastating to look at injury. And I think I've seen a lot fewer comments lately of, oh, there's our trade deadline acquisition, kind of as like a facetious joke. Like, I don't know when we're going to see Robles back, which sucks. Hopefully we'll get an update in the next month, but I definitely think in that infield, you have to start looking at some moves like Ben Williamson. Right now it's exposed. He's been exposed.
It was fun for a week.
Yeah. I mean, that Baseball Savant page, I mean, it's like a blue raspberry Jolly Rancher. Like, it's not pretty to look at. There's not a lot of red there. In the defense, we saw it last night. He kind of bobbled a play that could have easily been an out at home, or at least turn the double play, and maybe that just changes some things and let some things snowball. And his value is to be a Gold Glove third baseman immediately, and he's been good.
Yeah.
At best, he's been good. And the bat, there's just no pop to it and stuff. And there's some guys you and I have talked about that we'd love to see get a shot at third base that they've just kind of kept in their spots in the minor leagues. And this is a deadline where there's not a lot right now because it's too early to tell, right? All winter, everyone talked about Mariners, Cardinals, boom, that's the deal. There's going to be a deal there. Oh, Arenado's going to get shipped off. We're at the season end right now. I believe the Cardinals are just a game out of the playoffs, right? They're right behind the Cubs. They look like they might have figured something out. And so that might be a team that's not there. Nobody really thought about the Orioles as a trade possibility, not because they weren't a fit, because the Orioles are trying to win the World Series. They just went out and got Tyler O'Neill. And look at them. They look like an absolute dumpster fire. So you just don't know. And I feel like you get to about 75, 80 games is right when you start to see those trades start to really come alive. But never discount what Jerry can do. I definitely think that there are moves internally that they can make to help the infield. I think everyone knows what we're talking about. It's just a matter of time before a certain super duper hot prospect at second base gets called up. But you've got to get the depth in the outfield. You've got to get that figured out, and you've got to figure out your hot corners. Like third base and first base, when's the last time you saw a real legitimate playoff contender that had what we had at those positions? They're super valuable offensive positions, super important on defense. At third base, you have to shore those up if you truly want to be up there with the Tigers and the Yankees, and you want to hold off the Rangers and the Astros and whoever else is in the running there in the American League.
Yeah, it's a real bummer that Polanco couldn't stay healthy because the idea was he'd play third. That would be easier on his knee, and then he got the oblique injury, and that kind of complicated that. Things would look a lot different if he could play every day or even close to every day over at third base.
Right. Yep.
You mentioned Cole Young, obviously, his first year at the AAA level, the former first-round pick. I mean, he's made a pretty rapid ascension through the minor leagues with that hit tool. I think he's just 22 years old still as we sit here today. Overall, his numbers, he's up to 256, 368, 433. In Tacoma, a little bit of pop, 4 home runs on the season. And then you love the walk-to-strikeout ratio, almost 1-to-1, which is something that you want to see from him. Certainly at least until the power comes. But since the calendar turned to May, over 300, he's been on an absolute tear. A lot of extra base hits. He's slugging the ball, and he's doing it pretty consistently. Like how do you reconcile making sure he's ready and not calling him up too soon versus, look, we have a desperate need. This kid's red hot. We drafted him in the first round for this reason. How much longer can they wait?
You're like we talked about, you got a 2.5 game lead right now, right? And so things are good. You're making it work with, you're MacGyvering it basically right now with smoking. I don't want to say smoke and mirrors because
you just gave me the idea for the thumbnail for this show.
There you go. I don't want to say smoke and mirrors. You have the best closer in baseball. You have a top 10 bullpen right now. You have two guys that are pitching like number 2, possibly even number 1 starting level pitchers in Castillo and Wu. Julio has been good, and the power has started to pop a little bit more than we've normally seen this time of the year. So maybe there's a bigger explosion as we get into the summer. And then you have the best catcher in baseball. So like there are those pieces where it's not like, do you remember when we brought up Mike Zunino and it was just a horrific roster and it was like, hey, Mike, can you save us? And it wasn't ready. And I think Cole Young in previous regimes would have been a Mariner last year in September, and they would have brought him up at the beginning of the year. And I think if he had an insanely amazing spring training, which I think he had a fine spring training, maybe that pushes the narrative a little bit. But I think there's this huge swell of prospects that are coming, and he's like the next one. And there's a little bit of a gap between him. And so he's kind of caught in between worlds where I feel like he can come up and help this team that is a little bit better than we might have thought going into the year. But he'll also be a year and a half ahead of the 7, 8, 9 potential prospects that we've all been drooling about for the last 2 years. And so I think as long as you don't feel like the season's slipping away, what's a few more at bats in AAA? However, if you feel like the time is now, and this is just that's that decision by Jerry and Hollander, if you feel like he's ready, second base is a dud right now. And if he can come up and if you feel like he can come in and fit into that 7, 8, or 9 hole role and be a valuable asset, then I think it makes sense. Like it just kind of goes back to that shroud of mystery of like, we know that Jerry got an extension. So it's not like there's this desperation, right, from the front office that we kind of talked about last year. It felt desperate. This doesn't feel desperate. This team is not 20-28 or 21-28, and they feel like the season's slipping away. And then also there's the other thing, the elephant in the room. It's the service time manipulation, right? Like every team does it. We're not any better or worse than any other team. Everyone does it. Rarely do you get the situation where Julio Rodriguez gets the shot. And that worked out for the Mariners, right? Made the playoffs. He got Rookie of the Year. We got the extra draft pick.
What's the cutoff date? It's in June, isn't it?
It's in June. And I believe it was the same time that George Kirby got called up for his debut, was in like that second week of June. And so that's what I think. There's no reason for panic. Even if you swept the Houston Astros or you win the next 3, right, you would be up, 5.5 games. We saw what a 10-game lead in June does, right? It doesn't matter necessarily. Things can fall apart. You get exposed over 162 games. So wait until you can get that extra year with Cole Young. That's what they're going to do. So I might as well acknowledge it. Get him here in about a month. That's another month of at bats. That's another good amount. Is this just a 2-week heater, or is he really 3-4 weeks? Okay, this guy, he's above AAA, and it's time to call him up. And you get him here for a home series, and the crowd gets exciting. It's a business, right? Like
right.
You act like we talk about these things like it's fantasy baseball or we're playing MLB The Show on our Xbox, but like it's also a business, and there's reasons behind holding guys back. But as well as a baseball side, I want to make sure he's ready. And so that's my guess is you'll see him in the second week of June.
Makes sense. And you talk about a heater, man, as far as heaters go, these are the numbers. Before May 3rd, he was running a WRC plus of 51. His slash line was 175, 299, 237. Still was only striking out 15.7% of the time. His walk rate was 11.2%. Since May the 3rd. 397, 486, 762. That's a 1248 OPS. His K percentage is down to 8.1%, and
that's important. That's massive.
He's walking a little bit more often. It's up about a percentage point. That equates to a WRC plus of 216. And I know you and I, we use analytics. We're not the heaviest analytic. I know I'm not personally I don't lean in. I'm still old school, right? And
Yeah.
I guess you could even take the word school out of it. I'm just old. I still look, at some of the traditional statistics, but WRC plus has become my favorite stat because I just love how it compares to the rest of baseball. And if you're not familiar with it, a 100 WRC plus means you are league average. So a 110 means you're 10% better than league average, et cetera. The great hitters in baseball, the MVPs, will run WRC pluses at times of 150, 160. 216 is insane.
Yeah.
But to your point, I like that idea. If they can stay afloat, I think the American League West is going to allow us to do this.
Yeah.
Just because they just haven't come to us. We'll see how the rest of this series goes. I think it's important that they at least split it.
Yeah.
That it affords you that opportunity to hopefully get Gilbert back, maybe get Miller back in some capacity. Gilbert gets things straightened out, and then you call Cole Young up. And I think he's going to help. He can't not help because he's probably a better hitter today than any of those other options at second base outside of maybe Dylan Moore.
No, I agree. And Dylan Moore is awesome in baseball as a utility guy. Like, that is what you want him as. Gold glove fielder, has not looked that way this season. Some throwing issues, but like the versatility he provides, the pop he provides, that's awesome to have that in specific. It's like Mark McLemore, right? If you remember from back in the day with the Mariners, like, he was perfect in that role. When you started to ask him to start 70, 80, 90 games in a season, that's when you start to run into problems and you realize your house is not as stable as you want it to be. Yeah. Have Cole Young come into that role. Whenever we get a tough lefty, boom, Dylan Moore, come on in. You have a roster that allows Cole Young to ease into a playoff roster. Like, that's perfect. This is the experience you want him to get. Come in June, help us out for the final 100 or so games of the year. And we're also going to protect you against, insane lefties with a awesome offensive player in Dylan Moore against lefties. It's perfect.
Now, one other bat that's been heating up lately, and really from the day that he set foot on the field down in Tacoma has been effective, has been productive, is Dominic Canzone. And I can't figure out what the organization thinks about this guy, to the point that you'd rather go out and spend $3.7 million to pick up the rest of Tavares's contract, a guy that was really, really struggling at the plate. When meanwhile, down on the farm, Canzone, a guy who's never really hit for a high average, is hitting damn near 300. His slash line's 297, 341, 653 at the time, almost 1,000 OPS. He's got 12 home runs down there. The swing looks locked in. The strikeouts are down. He's only struck out 26 times in 118 at bats. I don't know how much more they need to see from him before they give him some at bats.
No, like, it seems like he's like knocking, like, hello, let me in and stuff. And obviously Tavares, made the big hit against the White Sox to kind of help us steal a series that should not have been as close as it was, which kind of leads into, like, again, the vibes are good. They are, despite last night's start, the vibes are good. But like, it's, again, you're like, I know it's bad weather, but we should have pummeled the White Sox, and it took a couple last second big home runs for us to kind of pull away and stuff. But right. I just wonder if it's just the tools were just too attractive, too tempting for Dipoto and Hollander not to, well, let's spend the money. Let's take a shot. We got Victor Robles right, and look what he did for our franchise. Look what he did for our group, and like, let's see what we can do with Tavares. But again, it's not like Canzone wasn't hitting well a little bit before that too. Like, so as a fan, I don't have an answer. I don't know why he's not up. Like, again, he's been playing absolutely unbelievable. It just seems like they were intent on, we're going to spend a little bit of money on Tavares because we think we can create Victor Robles 2.0. And we'll see what that ends up looking like. The defense is very good. His arm is unbelievable. His speed is real. The bat is why he's not a Texas Ranger anymore, right? Like, and so Canzone was the same thing. Some of his at bats in the last 2 years when he would come up, sometimes when he made contact, that ball would look like it was going to leave T-Mobile ballpark. Like, when he makes contact, he's got that beautiful left-handed swing, that golf swing. Yeah. But man, when he misses, it is rough to look at, and there are some cold spells. And so I just wonder if they're still seeing something that they want him to continue to work on, because we don't have to rush him up. But again, this team desperately needs just another bat right now to help kind of keep things going afloat for another month. And I would like, I mean, I don't know, would you like to see Jorge Polanco go on the DL just to get some rest? Or is he more of a, if he just is who he is, and so they have to just push him out there? I don't know. But it's just weird that we don't have a team Canzone yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe defense was a determining factor. That's been a sneaky aspect to this team as well that I don't think is getting enough attention. You know, they're top 10 in the league in defense, and that wasn't necessarily the strong suit last year. And so, you know, maybe that's kind of their thinking is, hey, let's at least get what we can out of pitching and defense to get through until some of these guys get back healthy. We haven't talked about Harry Ford. We're going to do that next week. We're going to talk about the mystery of Harry Ford. Like, where does he fit? Is he a square peg in a round hole? Is he does he have a future on this roster? Or ultimately, as I've believed actually for 2 years now, that the reason they've kept him behind the dish and haven't experimented more with playing him around the field a little bit is because ultimately he's going to be the guy that gets moved maybe in the next month or two. I know.
We'll talk about it next week. I know.
Yeah, we will. We'll focus on that. We don't want to unload all the bullets in the gun this week. But he's been just as red hot as Cole Young since the calendar turned over to May. It's unbelievable what he's doing as well. So we'll look at that next week. Let's finish on this because it's remarkable to me how, like, when you're scrolling through Twitter during a Mariners game, there is no shortage of constant berating and criticism of Dan Wilson and his decisions and his moves as a manager, especially as it relates to how he handles the pitching staff and some of his late inning moves and pinch hitting guys and stuff like that. And yet here we are, we just spent 40 minutes talking about how is this team that was slapped together, MacGyvered together, as you said, guys dropping like flies. Every time you get hot, you lose another key player to injury. And yet Dan Wilson doesn't seem to be getting enough credit, and conversely seems to be getting a ton of criticism from, you know, a lot of content creators and media members out there and fans that are watching this team. But how can you not look at everything we just talked about and how this team is in first place despite all of that and not give credit to Wilson?
No, and going back to it, like, he even was getting criticism on the broadcast, like in a very, like, and I would even say a fair way. Like, we have, side note, I know we haven't talked about it, we have an amazing broadcast team, right? Okay. We love Ryan Roland Smith.
It's been a focus of a lot of conversations this week.
Just a little bit. Ryan is a rising star in baseball. Mariner fans, like, enjoy the time that you have with him. Like, he is on his way up. Like, he is a star. And Goldsmith, we are so fortunate to have had him be our broadcaster. And I think it's just kind of cool to think about, like, I have a 3-year-old son, and, like, he's already, like, you know, it's hard to get him to watch more than a few minutes of a baseball game, but, like, just thinking of, like, oh, I grew up with Dave Niehaus and Rick Riz, and he's going to grow up with, like, Goldsmith. And, like, it's just, like, that's so cool. Like, I'm super excited about that. We have such a great team. But even Goldsmith, which was something I really appreciated, was like, oh, that's an interesting, like, he was like, man, I don't understand that decision. And that was in that first series against the Astros that, I think it was one of those games. It was the game we lost in 11 innings where we were 1 for 20 with runners in scoring position and just some weird bullpen moves. It's just, it's a pattern, right? Like, the day Jerry DiPoto leaves Seattle and we get a new GM, it's going to be jarring. It's a new relationship. And that's the same thing going from Service. We were used to how Service did things with the bullpen and the lineups, right? Always going to have a lefty against a righty if I can in the lineup, even if the righty's a way better hitter and stuff, like, very set things. And Dan's a little different, and he's a little bit more aggressive than Scott was, not just on the base paths when the team is healthy, but also in the bullpen. We've seen a little bit more bunting, like, which I know pisses a lot of people off, but, like, Dan he seems to me like a guy that has been given the keys and has been given probably a little bit more freedom than our previous manager has. That is how I view the way Dan has managed so far. He manages with the confidence of, I'm going to be here no matter what goes good or bad, but we're going to play our style of baseball. The walks, the Ks, like, immediately since he took over last year, those numbers have changed. And I can't remember what he finished last year, but I think Dan finished with a really good record last year. I want to say it was like 15-10 or even better than that. I'd have to go back and look. But at the end of the day, despite the why is he doing that? Despite all the stuff you see on social media, He's 28-21 with MacGyver in it, right? Like, and a lot of credit. We talked a lot of credit about Dipoto and Hollander and stuff with finding bullpen guys, but that's also Dan doing his side. It takes everyone to make this team go. And I also think just listening to Dan Wilson on the interviews or the broadcasts that we would get him a few times, like when Mike Blowers had his injury and stuff, and he spent a lot of the season, resting. Dan picked up a lot of those road games. I mean, he would go out there with Dave Sims and Goldsmith, and just listening to him talk, like he definitely doesn't strike me as like the premier broadcaster, but he just has like that uncle or slash fatherly older brother feel to him as a ball player. And you can just tell he's a catcher, right? And the catcher is that connection between the rotation and the hitters in the clubhouse. Like they are that unifying thing. And that's why you see so many catchers go on to be managers and do a good job at it as well and stuff. And you're even seeing it with like specifically the San Francisco Giants. Buster Posey is now in charge of that whole operation, and they seem to be really locked in on what they're trying to do. And I just feel like the team respects Dan. It's just like that football coach that they've embodied his identity and stuff. And I feel like you're seeing that with this team. And so if this team was 20-28, go ahead, give him some guff. That's fine. He's 28-21, and they're not fully loaded right now. And so give him that shot. And again, over 162 games, I know I said this a couple of times, everything will be exposed. We will know by the end of the season what kind of manager we have with Dan Wilson. And right now, I think it's a guy that's got us in contention, and so I'm fine with that. And I may not always agree with the bullpen decisions or who's starting. Why isn't Leo Rivas on the field? What's going on? There's things we don't know, but for right now, he's getting the job done, and I'd say get off his back.
49-34 so far as a manager. That equates to a 59% win-loss percentage. That is better than Earl Weaver. If he retired today, he'd be in the top 15 in all-time managerial win-loss percentage. We may be getting ahead of ourselves, but pretty decent start for Dan Wilson so far. I would like to see, and I always say this too. I say it about players. I say it about coaches all the time. When I think we've gotten to where immediate gratification is such a priority for us now as fans these days. We just want it. We want it now, that we forget that players get better, they develop and improve, and so do coaches. We saw it with Scott Service. We've seen it with other coaches around Major League Baseball. We see guys get fired and then they go somewhere else and they thrive. We've seen that here. Bob Melvin gets fired in Seattle, goes on to have great success elsewhere. And so, I am anxious to see him develop, and I'd really like to see what he can do with a healthy roster.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Yeah, that's going to do it for our first episode here, our Maiden Voyage. I want to do something here because I forgot to change my my Twitter handle under my name. This is the new Twitter handle for the show. Somebody took Mariners Forever years ago, only has 7 followers and no avatar. Pisses me.
You don't seem bitter at all, Dan.
What are you going to do about it, right? I'm going to keep talking about it. I didn't get in on it as early as I did with Seahawks Forever. I got that thing right off the bat. So it's Mariners_forever. And that's where you can find us. We'll try to be active on there, both Michael and I, as much as we can. And then the format, the plan for the show, weekly shows, Thursdays or Fridays, depending on schedule. It'll give us a chance to recap the week that was. This show was obviously kind of setting the scene, setting the stage, how we got here and where do we go from here. And now we'll kind of settle more into like weekly recaps, looking ahead to big weekend series, things of that nature. We will do shows, in response to any big moves or injury news, trades. We've got the draft coming up. As we get closer to that, we'll start to focus on that. That's one of Michael's areas of expertise. So can't wait to get his thoughts as we get closer to the draft on what the Mariners might do, holding the 3rd pick in the draft. Thank you, Draft Lottery.
Yeah.
And also the biggest draft pool in Major League Baseball and the most draft capital this year. So they'll be able to maneuver around with some of that. So each week we'll do that. We'll recap, we'll look ahead, and then we'll take a look at 1 or 2 storylines kind of elsewhere in the system and the organization. So the best way to keep up with us and support the channel is hit that like button and subscribe. And if you want to get notified of new episodes, hit that bell button, and then follow us on Twitter, and we'll stay up to date with you. So appreciate y'all being here. Michael, this was fun. I will as we look ahead, we'll zero in on some cool topics in the future. And then once we get to a certain follower count, we will have the ability to go live, and that'll be fun too. We can do some live shows and start to get some interaction as our follower count gets up there. So yeah, we need to come up with a catchphrase. We need to come up with a slogan or something. We'll do that. And graphics, an intro, some of that sexy stuff to dress the show up. That'll come. But right now, it's bare bones. It's you and me. It's old school.
Love it, man. I love it. No, this is cool. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to start this with you guys. I don't think there's a more chaotic team in baseball, maybe even sports, than the Seattle Mariners and stuff. And so there's so many exciting things to talk about going forward. And I can't wait to hopefully what's going to turn into a cool playoff run this summer into the fall with you guys. And the draft's going to be super exciting. This is just, there's so much going on with the Mariners right now, not just now, but going into the future and all these exciting things. And so, Dan, I'm excited to share this journey with you, man.
Thanks, man. And also, we have a bunch of great colleagues and contacts and friends that we have in the media and content creation out there that cover the Mariners and do such a great job doing that. Excited to have some of those guys on here as guests as we move into the future as well. So that's going to wrap it up. We'll see you next week.
Go Mariners.